Okay, welcome to another edition of Now You Know, and today we've got a very recognizable guy here who's an old friend, been on the show, what, three or four times? Three times?
Yeah.
Something like that, and he's taken us to various places in the world, New Zealand, Norway. Where else, Mike?
Out west, I think we did Yellowstone. And
out west.
Yeah,
well,
we did one of like constricted parks anyway.
So today we are going to do a tour of national parks. I mean, all the national parks, or not all the pictures of the national parks, but you have been to all of them. You've been to all, and I didn't realize this until now, all 55.
Well, there are 63 national parks, and we did every one in the United States, on the continental United States.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, and then there are 2 in Hawaii, U.S. Virgin Islands, and we did Glacier Bay in Alaska. But there are, I think, 6 or 7 in Alaska that we haven't done. In American Samoa, we probably never will do. But there is one in American Samoa, too.
So you retired as a German teacher at Skowhegan Area High School back in 2017, and I won't say you got off to a slow start in your traveling, but you got off to a, what I would call a fairly reasonable start in the beginning, and then you, how do I say this, you got religion as far as traveling was involved, and from 2019 to present day, you've been all over the place, including all the national parks, 55 national parks in the U.S. And it's been an amazing journey. And you were even slowed down a bit by COVID, but still managed to accomplish all that in roughly about a 6-year period of time.
We did.
So
I got to mention too, but from 2017 and 19, we're doing more international trips. So we did take trips in there, but we really started in 2019, as you said. We kind of said, you know, we want to see our own country. We really want to concentrate on national parks, and so it became this quest to see every single national park in the continental United States, and those we could see outside too, like Hawaii.
Well, folks, so today they're going to be able to see some selected pictures from national parks. Some might be very recognizable to you, and others may be a little more obscure. But it'll be some beautiful scenery, if nothing else, here today, and hopefully a bit of an educational experience as well. So let's go, Mike. Might as well do it.
Well, this first slide, it shows the national parks. I mean, I think it was kind of a nice way to see that all the green trees that you see represent the national parks in the United States. And of course, we have one here in Maine, and actually the only one in New England, and that's Acadia National Park. And we tended to do it kind of like grouping. And I got to credit again my wife as far as when we did national parks, we kind of did some in clusters. You know, one of our trips was a Midwest trip where we did 10, but it was a lot of driving, about 7,000 miles, you know, up into Minnesota and the Dakotas and down even to West Virginia, Missouri. And but we tended to do it, you know, where we get like Washington State. We stayed in Washington State and did those 3, and actually attended a Dave Matthews concert for 3 days and combined. But so it was kind of a neat. But this is the picture of the United States, and you can see down below here how in Alaska we did the Glacier Bay, and then U.S. Virgin Islands, and the 2 in Hawaii. We visited 3 islands in Hawaii. But what I did is, again, I didn't go any particular order. I picked, because sometimes the topography started being the same, you know, so Rocky Mountains. And so what I did is kind of a variety. And here we go. The first one, I started with Acadia. This is sunrise taken just this fall, Acadia National Park on the top of Cadillac. Of course, everybody knows Acadia, one of many people's favorite parks. I think it's like most visited, something like 7th or 8th on the list of all the 63 national parks.
I heard a number of like 4 million visitors.
Yeah, 4 million visitors, yeah, this past year. And, you know, a lot of the rangers, when we talked to them, they say, where are you from? We said, Maine. Is, oh, Acadia National Park. They love it too. So it's a beautiful park. And this was a thing, and this was taken near the Jordan Pond. You can,
Beautiful
the Jordan Pond,
location.
yeah. And this is just another part. There are so many pictures. I've seen people who go to Acadia.
Did you have tea and crumpets at the
We
Jordan
did.
Pond?
We
Very
did.
good.
Very good, yeah.
Hard to get in there, by the way. I've tried a few
Oh,
times.
yes, yeah. This is Glacier Bay in Alaska. We did a cruise out of Seattle, so we got to see, and what we loved about that is you're going all along the coastline, British Columbia and Alaska, so you're seeing a lot of mountains, but this day was absolutely pristine, and this is called the Johns Hopkins Glacier, and I mentioned to Chris, we saw this earlier. I mean, this ship is 5 miles away from the glacier, which is in here, and that
Hard to
glacier,
believe.
it is, and the glacier itself is 250 feet high, so, you know, you look at it, it doesn't look like, I'm not saying the glacier doesn't look like much, it does, but that goes in, I think it's roughly 12 miles, you know, in, and it moves towards the sea, and there's another one too coming up here. The Marjorie Glacier is very famous, and you can see here, we saw this calf. Calving is when sheets of ice fall into the water, and you can see the two in the foreground here. You know, bits of ice here, and that's sometimes from calving, and sometimes from the ice flow. But this is in Alaska, in Glacier Bay, and this is one of. We really enjoyed this trip too. It was a really nice cruise, actually. We stopped in Juneau and etc.
You know, recently they've had some real flooding issues in Juneau from one of the glaciers that will. I forget, is it June, July, something like that, and the water will come in town, and they've had to do some evacuations.
Oh yeah,
there
the Mendenhall Glacier we had visited,
Mendenhall,
and that just, you're right, there was a huge flood there. And in fact, we went on this trip to Ketchikan. They get something like 154 inches of rain a year.
Jeez.
Juneau doesn't get as much, but this particular year they did. And you're right, there was a lot of flooding and damage. Well, because they get a lot of snow, then you get rain on top of that.
That's right.
This is a familiar site. What's interesting is the Grand Canyon, it surprised me, the carving out of the Grand Canyon is about 6 to 7 million years old, but as we mentioned privately, the rock exposed is 1.7 to 2 billion years old, which is really remarkable. Of course, the Colorado River has carved out a lot of this, but this is sunrise, and Gene and I went out. It was about 15 below zero, and we went out here.
My.
So, oh yeah, it was well worth seeing. It was a beautiful sunrise, coming up over the Grand Canyon, and we did hike down into the Point.
Yes, yes, been there before.
But it's beautiful. But you'll notice in the lower levels here, you didn't get snow. So as the upper reaches, you get the snow. And
absolutely.
From Flagstaff north, there was snow.
And this is on the South Rim.
Right, and it's on the South Rim.
And for those of you, I'm sure most know that the North Rim had a very tragic fire that burned a lot of it, including the historic Grand Canyon Lodge. I don't know if you've been in that before, but it was. I haven't
been in the North Rim. We were in the South, and we've been in the Yellowstone, where we stayed in one of those lodges with the lodge pole pines and stuff. It's beautiful, but you can see how if it began to burn, it might go up fast.
Yeah, there's not much for water sources there,
right.
So
very tough. And this is, of course, another picture of the daytime of the Grand Canyon. It's just beautiful. The clouds, you could see the clouds in the depth of it, and just beautiful. But we hiked along the South Rim, which is beautiful. The next is one of course, our favorites, and I think a lot of people's favorites are the Tetons. The Tetons are about 10 million years old, but the rock again itself is almost our bedrock is 1 to 2 billion years old, because when the crust, it was part of the continental uplift. When the crust really cracked almost, this rose in Jackson Hole sank.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called Jackson Hole, because that sank, and this got pushed up. Of course, the glaciers carve out a lot of these valleys you see here and the tops of the mountains. And one thing we talked about when Chris and I met earlier, just to go over this, but the Appalachians at one time were probably double the size
Yeah.
of this back 300 million years ago. Of course, we look at our Appalachians as rounded mountains. In time, long after we are gone, you'll see how these mountains will in time, erode. And that's why they're so beautiful, because you can see almost from the base all the way up to the top of the mountains, which makes it kind of unique. I think in most mountain ranges, even in the Rockies, you have the peaks of it, but you don't see from almost the base of the valley right up to the top.
I've only been there once, but boy, I'll tell you, it's absolutely stunning.
It is. It is stunning
to look at those.
And we stayed in Idaho, so when you come up over the, kind of the mountain, you're looking down that valley and seeing it. It's just remarkable. And this is a Schwabacher, viewpoint, and it was just kind of nice because you get we stopped at a lot of different viewpoints that day. We also crossed Lake Jenny. I don't have that picture here, but we hiked up to Inspiration Point. But the one thing about the Tetons too, a lot of water. You've got the Snake River in there too, but it's just beautiful. This is the Mormon Row, also the Tetons, but the Mormon Row, and of course the Mormons came here and tried to settle, but part of it, the harsh conditions, was really can be unforgiving because it's a short season. You have a lot of snow because it hits early in farming. And
what's the elevation there, Mike?
Elevation here the mountains can get up to 13,000 feet.
13,000, yeah.
13,000 feet, and so around the late 1880s, the settlers began to disperse. But these are the molten barns and stuff. There's a famous one down the road, but there were some tour buses there, and more people. So Gene and I kind of ventured down. It's kind of nice because we were alone, just to walk around and just it was beautiful, beautiful day, and that was the beginning of the morning for us. The next here is the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park. And what was interesting about Glacier in Montana, again, as I mentioned, trying to get to visit different parks, that's kind of isolated from other national parks. And so what we did is we drove to Quebec, flew to Calgary, and from Calgary went to Waterton. And Waterton is a sister national park in Canada with Glacier and National Park. And one of the things, and it really is, they work together because, as I said, the animals don't know the difference. They don't know they're crossing over Canada.
No.
So, part of it, so to have the same, almost like rules, regulations, Waterton and Glacier work together, and this is Glacier. And so what we did is we flew to Calgary, we went to Waterton first, and then crossed the border into Glacier, and then went down to St. Mary. But this is the base of, coming out of St. Mary, we're about to climb the Going to the Sun Road. You can see why, because, you're climbing up to, 10, 12,000 feet.
And I think I mentioned to you off air, I'd been there once before, and two things, actually. I forgot to bring my passport, so we could not go over to the Waterton side. My wife mentioned, let's go to the Waterton side, and I reached around and said, uh-oh. I didn't bring my passport, so we were never able to see that, but I understand it's really,
it's
really something else. And also, we went there in June, and for those of you that want to go there and go up the road, forget it, because they don't have it all plowed out at that point. I think it's almost mid-July by the time they have that. So fortunately, you were able to do it.
And that's one thing I'll mention to the audience too, is we tend to travel late August, early September, and sometimes October to different places. Depends on where we're going. California, October was pretty good, very good actually. We've had really great weather. But one of the things that, like in a place here, we went in May, and we had a great time. But we do watch the weather, and wildfires we've tried to avoid, and so with times of the season where you get the drought and the heat and stuff. So, and also kids going back to school.
That's right.
Now they're retired, they go to school, and there's still plenty of tourists, but it's not as crowded, not as hot, etc.
Yeah.
And this is going down with the Logan Pass, and the Going to the Sun. You go up to Logan Pass, and that's kind of the apex, and you begin down again. Just a lot of natural beauty. This is just one spot, and it was actually kind of tough to stop and take pictures because you're on a road and it's quite a narrow road, and you've got two-way traffic and stuff. So it's just not great to hop out and when you've got traffic going by. But it's beautiful going down. We're now here in Sequoia National Park, and this is, as you can see, the General Sherman tree. I'm standing here at the base, and the base of this is, I think, 36 feet wide. The General Sherman tree is, of course, one of the most famous. These are remarkable trees, really, because even though you see how large they are, that goes, I think, is about 250 feet high.
Yeah.
But the roots only go 6 to 12 feet into the ground, but they go laterally about 100 to 200 feet. So that really stabilizes them. And what's built in is a protection, a very hard shell core, the insect resistance, and I think with the spread out there as far as capturing moisture, but they thrive in this climate. And the thing is, it's pretty much only this climate,
And that part of California, I think a lot of California is pretty moist.
It is.
Up in that area.
You do. You get moist. You get morning fog. You get rains. But what the natives used to do too is they did burns, so that to try to protect also. I mean, so you didn't have the underbrush and fires. And of course, I know that's hard to do sometimes when the more people you have with that. But when you think of the wildfires that they do have out west, part of that is the native Indians would do a lot of burns, control burns, exactly.
Yeah.
But this is the sequoia, and this just shows you that, all throughout that forest you found groves of trees like this, and it's remarkable. You walk among them, and they're huge, beautiful. It's quiet. That's the other thing about.
Don't you feel pretty insignificant walking?
You certainly
among them?
do.
They're unbelievable.
But I feel very young too, because I'm thinking, well, this tree here, for example, a small one, maybe 300 to 500 years old.
Yeah.
And beautiful. Now we're in Yosemite, and this is El Capitan. El Capitan is probably interesting. We'll bring up to the modern day is this Alex Hanold scaled this freehand. Freehand. No ropes, etc. And he just did this in Taipei. He did a skyscraper in Taipei, which is you can find that on YouTube. But he had a movie out, a documentary, Free Solo. That's very remarkable.
I saw something the other day about this guy climbed a skyscraper.
That's
free.
him.
That's him.
That's him. Yeah.
That's him. Can you imagine the type of intense concentration it takes, as well as the complete fearlessness of the. I was. It's unbelievable. I can't even think of that. Really.
And you think because with the scaling, but he had this curly cue part of the design of the building where he's scaling too, and it's just chalk on his hands, and that's it. If you go to YouTube and put Alex Hanold, Taipei. And I think it's Hanold, maybe 2 N's. You would find it, and it's I think 2 minutes long, but it's heebie-jeebies.
On the skyscraper segment, they interviewed his mother, and they did a live shot of this thing, and she said, I wasn't going to watch it, but I didn't want to be the only person in the world who didn't. So.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah. And Yosemite, we're still here in Yosemite too, and this is Half Dome on the left. That's one of the famous mountains. And Gene and I in the morning had gone down to Half Dome in the valley and to see sunrise, and it was really, really neat. We were the only ones there. Of course, it's dark when we're heading out, and of course you get to a sign that says Lion. This is Lion Mountain country. And I thought, oh, that's great. So, because I was looking for eyes as we were going over our headlands, but of course, the sun starts coming up, and but the sun came up, here. But we were down in this valley down here.
How crowded was it at Yosemite when you were there?
It was crowded. I mean, we stayed at a campground that had private cabins, the camping spots, but it was quite crowded, even that time of year.
The proximity to Los Angeles, they have a lot of people that come in there, and that's the only thing that one time I was there, I found that
Right.
trying to escape the crowds was
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, but we, by staying there and having that cabin, and again, I said Gene does these things ahead of time, and so it was just finding the place, although that was interesting. Not Yosemite, but our cabin that time. And here we did this hike, Taft Point it's called, and this is El Capitan from above, but you can see the valley below here, and it was just beautiful. It's very peaceful, walking down in there, but just out looking out over these things that you've seen on TV, and to think you're in Yosemite, and just some of these hikes are in viewpoints also.
Yeah.
But not only, but as you said, driving to El Capitan, you're jockeying for parking spots, and we did find one, which is nice. But it's wonderful. But again, we've really lucked out on our trips with weather. I mean, we really have not had days that have been canceled, due to
Well, you've been
weather.
going from August, September, October, and if you're ever going to have
Yeah.
good weather, and frankly, the weather out west is more consistent
Yeah.
a lot of times than the east anyway. So
Well, you've seen these major storms, too, because sometimes you get,
Yeah.
you saw with the flooding in Washington State
True.
and Oregon.
Northwest, yeah.
Northwest,
yeah,
This is how again, credit with Gene, we had one of our favorite groups called The Head and the Heart. It's one of our favorite groups of Planet Red Rocks.
yeah.
And after we had traveled, there was that 2019, we had traveled to Florida, spent 6 weeks in New Zealand, went to Norway for 2 weeks, and then Gene said, well, Red, Head and the Heart's playing in Colorado. Do you want to go? And I said, geez, this sounds great. And Red Rocks is a fantastic venue. As you can see here, it's set almost 2 wings of sandstone, and it
Yeah.
goes down, and the stage is at the bottom. So the acoustics are fantastic, and it seats about 9,000 people, and you can see it's
Oh, it's pretty full.
it sells out. So she planned a 2-week trip to Colorado to see the national parks there, but also culminate with Red Rocks. So that was one of our last things that we did, is went to the concert, which was great. But in the meantime, we went to all the national parks. So
Fantastic.
So, and this was, of course, at night. And this is, as I think in intermission, I just wanted to kind of get the crowd again. And, this is at night. And it was a full moon that night, too. So later, the full moon's rising. It was about a 75-degree night. It's just beautiful.
Perfect.
It was perfect. It really was. And the seats there are fantastic. I mean, the benches are about this wide. And in front of you, you might have like 2 feet, so it's very comfortable moving around. It's wonderful.
Climate-wise, I mean, how much of the year can they run this?
I would say probably into the fall,
Yeah.
because we were there in July, but I would say probably, I would think possibly mid-May to September, maybe
Yeah.
end of September, because it's, here it's Denver sometimes is a fairly mild climate,
Yeah.
it's like, so, you can get snow obviously, but it can be 70 degrees too.
That's the thing about Denver. At Mile High,
Yeah.
you can have a 70-degree day one day and
Right.
a snowstorm the next. You
Right.
never know.
Yeah, because this is Morrison, but still, and I not living there, I don't know how late, but of course those summer concerts. This is one of the things that was just remarkable to us is Mesa Verde, and the Pueblo Indians from about 1200 AD to about 600 AD lived in these dwellings, and when you think of no engineering, they made bricks to do these buildings.
Yes.
In the mortar. They used, the mortar, because water, the sandstone, and were able to mix a great mortar. And so this is Mesa Verde, and they farmed. They ate, of course, berries. They faced south, so of course you got the cooling, during the hot part of the sun here, but then also the winter time, you had the southern exposure, and then it was left. This particular thing was not discovered till the 1880s, so they left in 600. Until that time, so about the 1880s, cowboys were out looking for the cattle and discovered this, so it's kind of shocking that it wasn't discovered before that.
And
but-
the other thing is just the amazing thing of how dry and arid the Southwest climate is to support this
Yep.
for you know, 1,000 to 1,500 years later, it's still intact. You
Yeah.
can imagine in Maine that wouldn't have lasted. Probably
Absolutely.
wouldn't have lasted 100,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it's and the thing is too is you can see this is built up in the mountains, and kept thinking, do you tell your kids, hey, go play? Because it is a heebie-jeebies. Where we were standing here, a guide was, standing here, but the ledge dropped down into the valley. And I kept thinking, and even within this, you'll see we had to climb ladders and scooch under things.
Oh, yeah.
And this is going from one plateau, this is still Mesa Verde. You had to climb this ladder, as the Pueblo Indians did, and move with them. But they had, places where they socialized, places where they, group. They cooked together, dwellings. It was a remarkable thing. And now here, this is going on these, I think it's 48 miles, the highest, asphalt trail is a Skyline Drive going from, I think it was Grand Lake into Estes?
Estes Park.
Yeah, we stayed in Estes Park, and we had come through this, but you go across the Continental Divide, and up here, but it's, of course, the Rocky Mountains, and, it's just, again, a lot of beautiful, and as you can imagine, they had construction going on, so they had a traffic jam of miles, and, you could see it snake around, but at one point, Jean said, geez, I'll get out and take a picture, and the way the road snuck around, she was able to go out, take this, and then, meet me, because we weren't moving at all, we'd be parked, then you might move 15 feet, but...
Cattle grazing on the hillside?
Yeah, these are elk.
Oh, that's elk.
Those are elk, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Elk grazing. It was amazing, but it was beautiful in the Rocky Mountain National Park. And as you can imagine, it's a huge park, lots to do. But one of the things is to get to trailheads, which we did. And we'd leave like 6 in the morning, and one of those to get to this park. We left at 6 in the morning, and you could get in, and the parking lot already had about 100 cars, and I think there were like 250 cars. But what Rocky Mountain does, in some of the other parks too, is they do have like satellite centers, so you might have to park away from the trailheads, but they have shuttles. Yeah, so it's not like you're left out, but we wanted to be right there because we figured we'd spend a lot of time.
What type of elevation are you at?
We are at we started at about, I think, 9,000 feet, but we went up to about 10,000. I think it was this is about 13,000 feet. The mountains and stuff.
Oh, I see the snow.
Yeah, you can see the snow, and we got up to one point where there's a waterfall. We stopped there, but it was just beautiful. We ate lunch, and
I can tell you that my wife and I years ago went out there and hiked one of the trails. I think we were 10, 11,000 feet where we were, and there was some elevation on the hike, and you notice breathing wise the difference.
Absolutely.
And you were out there for a while, so maybe you were getting somewhat acclimated.
Yeah, I think the first day we hiked, you'd notice that the second day wasn't as bad, but that was an 11-mile day, and
that's a lot.
Yeah, and the funny part too, from that trailhead, because we were heading down past this lake and then up to the timberline. What you saw that previous slide, you going down and down and down, and the one thought always occurs, on the way back, we've got to climb up these stairs. And but we made it.
Yeah, that's like the Grand Canyon, going down into the Grand Canyon and then trying to go back out. Don't try that on a hot day.
No.
I did that once.
Yeah.
Not good.
This was actually nice weather, too. This was beautiful. It was July, but we're now in Washington State, Rainier. This is Mount Rainier. In Mount Rainier, when you look at it, a lot of glaciers. And we're on the I think it was the Skyline Trail here too, but it was a beautiful trail. I met a girl from Wisconsin, and she traveled with us all day. Now I say the day during the hike, probably a 4-hour hike. But this is one of the most dangerous volcanoes, for the reason is they're saying that, like, if this typically not like Mount St. Helens that might explode, it's that the melting glaciers and the movement of debris. And there are cities down trail that if this goes, they have, especially after Mount St. Helens, a lot of evacuations, getting to higher ground, etc. But this, I think, last erupted, maybe 1,000 years ago. But it's quite stable. But they monitor it. But that always said, it's considered, if it does ever erupt, it'll be extremely dangerous because you're going to get molten rock, glacial, mud, etc. You know, so it's not just as you'll see in.
Well, could it be like Mount St. Helens, where the eruption actually alters the climate for a period of?
Oh yeah, I'm sure anything like that would. You would release gases but Mount St. Helens, I think the biggest thing was the ash. You know,
Ash.
Ash into the air. You know, it does.
Didn't we
affect-
experience that back east? To some extent.
We would see from wildfires, we would see smoke, but I think there was a Krakatoa that sent,
Yeah.
you know, that was, you know,
This
years
would have been 1980, maybe roughly.
We may have.
I think there was something with that, and I think there was kind of somewhat of a cooling effect.
It's very
on that.
possible. You know, you get up in the atmosphere and block the sun.
Yeah.
And on this same hike, you know, Rainier, as you get up above and you get this, effect where, you know, you have, like you were mentioning, Chris, about being in these places with the moisture. You get moisture here and, you know, it looks like cloud cover, but a lot of this was fog. But again, you get above this fog level, because even when we started off, it was very sunny, you know, the last picture we showed. But here, you know, it's captured, the moisture's captured, and they have this effect, you know, with the air passing over and trapping. You can see a lot of the contrails. But this is Mount Adams in the background, and this you can barely see, but that's Mount St. Helens here, which erupted 1980, as you mentioned.
80, yeah.
It kind of blew off the top of that mountain, and it did cause a lot of destruction, 3 feet of ash in places,
Yeah.
and et cetera. But this is a Rainier, and this is Mount St. Adam. This is a Mount. We're now, and probably one of our favorite parks. Part of the reason is, you know, we did 2 things here. We did a hike called Angel's Landing, which is considered one of the most dangerous hikes in the world, and I do have an aversion to heights, so for about 2 months that was in the back of my mind.
Was there a little like bridge thing you go across, or a handrail thing? Or,
Oh yes, I'll show you here,
Yeah.
chains, and I'll
I looked when I went there. I looked up that. My wife just looked at me. We're not doing that.
No, this is Zion Canyon. And of course, you can see down below, when we left, we have to hike in about 2 miles to begin to ascent to Scouts Landing and then Angels Landing, and so we had headlamps on, but you could see the trail down below here, and so we're actually heading back after the hike. But I'm going to show you this Zion. But this is what you call Angels Landing. We hiked in probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and this is called Walter's Wiggles, and you can see these are switchbacks.
Yeah.
You can't probably see this on TV, but the person, you know, right here is just a human being, barely visible, but you know, you're doing these switchbacks.
Wow.
And I think there are 21 switchbacks, which leads you up to what's called Scouts Landing, and here it's fairly flat, because a lot of people decide, well, I'm not going up. They might be wise people, because it does drop from the summit. It drops off 1,000 feet in both directions.
Yeah.
And it looks wider here than it is,
Excuse me.
because you can see the chain section. You're like you were just mentioning, it's a fairly narrow path,
Yeah.
but you're holding on to a really rugged chain, you know, so to keep you from falling.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, needless to say, your heart's pounding.
Oh yeah.
And this is what you're looking at. You can see here more or less, and you're going to climb up this spine of this mountain, you know, and it's really, it's, as you see, it drops off here, that canyon I showed before, and it drops off here. So you're holding on to the chain, and the path is, you know, fairly flat and wide, but then you're crawling among rocks here till you get to the top. And, you know, there's a young couple offered to take our picture, and
good picture.
so we're looking at, we enjoyed that, because, you know, it was an accomplishment. Is something I was really nervous about doing, and I know people who have gone said there's no way I was going to do it, but we did it. I must say, too, going down, I had no fear. In fact, that's when you can get hurt, because I'm going down, I had absolutely no fear. I'm, you know, looking down, and I thought, that's when you have to concentrate, you know, because, you know,
trip.
yeah, you trip, yeah, exactly. And so I, you know, started, and you also have a lot of people going back and forth.
Well,
on that trail.
when you're going up, sometimes you're facing in, and you're going up, and if you fall, you're going to fall just a little bit forward. It's the downhill.
Yeah.
When you can really see things,
Right.
and then you can trip.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we went out early morning because of the crowds. I mean, you have to now get a reservation, because there were so many people who who would do this, hike, that, again, you're on that mountain path and you people passing by you. So everybody's good about, stopping one place, letting people go by. But again, it's a very popular spot.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing in Zion we did is the very next day was called the Narrows. And again,
Yes.
the conditions have to be right because these are slot canyons. And the slot canyons came up
Flood.
at 2,000 feet. And of course, water has carved out these canyons. But what we get, we rented neoprene socks and boots, and you typically wear shorts because the water can go in up to with pretty much our thighs. But I've heard of people going up to their chest. But if you do this, you can go. I think it was 16 miles up this, but we didn't go that far. We went about 4 miles. But a lot of it was wonderful. We loved it. We saw professional photographers out there, and because you're going to see these Narrows in calendars and pictures and places. So you have professional, photographers out there, getting the lighting, the perfect lighting, making sure people like us not in their picture and stuff. So,
That's right.
But you can see people up ahead. But when we went there weren't that many people because there's when you enter at one spot, there are hundreds of people, when you're coming back, and that's where a lot of people just stop right there, and they don't do the, the neoprene and hike up. But that was one of the goals we did. Which
Yeah,
we
we
loved.
didn't have the neoprene when we went there,
Yeah.
so we just looked in. But
Right.
it would. You had that opportunity to do it.
That
so
was
it's
great.
neat, very neat.
And that was one of my favorite pictures, only because it's just, as we're heading up there, it's just neat. And again, it was a great adventure, and once in a lifetime, most likely.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a national park, but again, Gene, along the way, and what we do for going from
And
park.
that's Forrest Gump. right
Forrest
there,
Gump, exactly. We stayed in a place called Mexican Hat, population 31, and we were heading to Monument Valley. You see in the background John Ford. If anybody loves westerns, John Ford made 6 or 7 westerns with that, in that park, this Navajo land. Stagecoach was one of his famous ones. And well, anyway, Forrest Gump is this scene where he's walking and he says, "I'm tired. I think I'll go home now." So they call it Forrest Gump Point, and they give coordinates, and so there's a little parking area, but. What's amazing about this is there were probably 20 of us. We wanted to get the sunrise coming off Monument Valley, but we get the coordinates, but everybody's taking turns. Like we had a person on a skateboard and a drone going down. We had people from Australia. They were doing they're running, so they would go to the base and run up. The other thing we had to wait for is coming out of Monument Valley, if a car is coming this way, we had to wait for 2 miles for that car to pass by.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't want the headlights.
Couldn't get the headlights.
Likewise, if anybody's going towards Monument Valley, we didn't want the taillights. So, it was a lot of patience. Excuse me. But it was fascinating. So Gene, that's a retake. I had done it, and she said, "No, I want you right on the line." So that's what we did. But that was a character. Of course, we put that on Facebook, and of course
perfect.
that kind of blew up. But it's a beautiful picture of Monument
Oh,
Valley.
it's just so open, and
so-
this is right on or near the border of Arizona
It
and
is.
Utah, right?
This is about 30 miles. And we're going to actually this, and then later there's a couple of things, Antelope Canyon in Arizona, Page, which crosses over the border. And that was about 100 miles away. But again, making use of time. This is not a national park, but such a neat national monument, Monument Valley. And like in the Navajo land, it was beautiful. So we ate breakfast after this, and then we headed to Antelope Canyon. And Antelope Canyon has upper antelope, lower antelope. And again, it's very spiritual for the Navajo Indians because it was a mixture of, heaven and earth. Almost hear the sunbeams coming through. Water and wind have carved out these canyons. So you have this swirling, all through. You're going through this, and you have to go with a Navajo guide. You can't go by yourself. And of course, you're going sometimes with pods of people, and it must have been an influencer, because you'd say, well, kind of stay together. We stayed right with him because you get so much information. He was a young kid, but he was great and good. He gave us hints about taking photography. He said, "Oh yeah, put it right here." It was so neat. And
it wasn't there, but it was at a park not far from Sedona that we went in. It was for Native American and so forth. And what what they would do with the rock formations where it let the light in, the Native Americans could not only tell the time of the day, but
Yep.
they could identify the seasons
Yep.
because the light would hit the rock at in the springtime at a different
Right.
point than
Yep.
it would be in the summertime, and so they were able to develop calendars based on that.
That's it.
Kind of interesting.
It is interesting. It's like again, for them, it's very spiritual. I mean, and you're dealing with a lot of tourists who are, coming through, and so, and you had to climb some ladders and stuff too, go from one level to another. But again, it's good to go with guides because people have died here. I mean, if they've gone with thunderstorms, coming flash floods going through, it's can be scary. But
yeah.
again, we try to travel and do things, again according to weather, and we've had great weather along the way. This is just another scene in this Antelope Canyon because we took several pictures, but you can see the swirl from both water and wind.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful because the lighting, you can see where we are is a little bit darker. And then you get purples, and sometimes you get the yellow, orange. It's just beautiful, and it was a good experience. We're now here in Bryce Canyon, Utah. Utah, we went in the fall of 2019 also. That was another travel year where we did 5 national parks in Utah, Bryce Canyon being one of them. And the one thing about Bryce is, again, that is eroding pretty fast. So, I mean, why, for us now, it's great to see the national parks because in time, some of these things, are going to erode and be gone.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not going to disappear overnight, but it's sandstone. You'll see a closer up picture here, but this is sunrise. We wanted to get the sunrise in Bryce Canyon. And there's a Navajo trail that you can hike down. You hike down in, and there's a thing called Wall Street, coming up.
Yeah, hoodoos.
The hoodoos, exactly.
Yeah.
And for the Native Americans, they believe these were, people.
Yes.
I mean that they obviously know those are people, but they represented people and spirits. So again, a lot of this is, very spiritual for the Native Americans. This is Thor's hammer, and again, you can see all the hoodoos, and they were coming out, but just pretty majestic looking at times. It almost looks like castles. But how wind and water. When the thing about Bryce, they get again things water that freezes. And
Yeah,
things.
that's right.
They'll get like freezing thawing. I think they said there's something like 200 freezing thawing events. So a lot of that will chip off rocks naturally, and this is in time has eroded. So they call this Thor's hammer. But you might suspect that in time, this may fall off.
Yeah, they're getting pretty narrow, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And this is Bryce. This is also in Utah, and this is in Arches. And this is called the Delicate Arch. And actually, on a lot of your Utah license plates, that's what you'll see. I mean, in Maine, we had the chickadee, and now we have, the pine tree. But this is the Delicate Arch. And I had a great lesson. Gene and I had a great lesson here. We had done the Fiery Furnace, which is another, hike there. And again, 2 or 3 with a guide. And it was about a 90-degree day. And we had plenty of water, but still, when you walk around and spend all day. Well, to get to the Delicate Arch, I mean, the pitch of it, I'm just guessing, is, 45 degrees. And it's hard rock, but you're walking up. So, of course, I tend to, and Jean's a little slower, but I'll go and then wait for her, and then she'll say, "Well, it's no fair for you to wait and then take off again." So we're hiking up, and again, it was hot, and it was not the end of the day, but it was mid-afternoon, and we saw this Asian couple, and I would just guess, I'm now 71. At the time we did this, we were in our late 60s, middle 60s, but I would guess that the Asian couple, mid-70s at the time. It seemed, They're walking step, step, step. I didn't see any water, anything else. It's, we'd pass them. And so, of course, we get up there and we thought, okay, we'll take a break, get a water break, and here comes the couple past us.
Yeah.
And so we'd take off again and, doing our hike, we'd stop, take a break before we get up there. Here comes the couple. And I started thinking, it's kind of true. Just take your time.
Take your time.
Everybody's going to get there. And I got to also credit Gene. There are several hundred people up here, and as you imagine, some people go underneath and they take pictures and groups of people. And Well, Gene sat there and just sat there and waited until no one was in the picture, which is to get that, just to get the arch
Patience.
itself. Yeah, because I stood and we took pictures. I was standing underneath there too, but we tend to not take a lot of ourselves. Things we want to remember, yes, and of course, but this was a beautiful picture. Delphi Arch,
Absolutely.
yeah. We're now in Yellowstone, and this is one of our favorite parks too. Yellowstone, the Tetons, and we did that together. As far as visiting the parks. But this is a Grand Prismatic, and the remarkable thing here is you can see this is geyser country. You know, you have boiling pots, boiling water. This is about 200-degree water, and of course the sunlight hitting. But there are microbes. What you see here is the different cooling of this water coming off, and microbes. There are these microorganisms that love and survive this. They survive and thrive in this. So you get this color from the microbes and also the cooling of the water. But this is a Grand Prismatic. You can see there's a walkway people can go to, and I think a lot of your tour buses do that, because especially people who don't want to hike or climb. But we wanted to see it from above, so we did a different hike to see it from above, which we're glad we did. But we spent this day along geysers. There were a lot of different spots where you have hot springs, and you had some not geysers itself, but bubbling pots coming up, and it was amazing part of a Yellowstone. This is called the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Of course, you'll see several Grand Canyons, and with the Grand Canyon, but I think because of the water, the Yellowstone River carving out, in this case, water, but a lot of your rivers carving out, there's one in Hawaii that you'll see later, but this is the Grand Canyon. This is Artist Point, and of course, I think artists were very inspired by the sunlight hitting this. It was kind of a cloudy day, so I don't get as much color, but it's very rich in color. The water was amazing to see the Yellowstone River coming down, and because on the other side too is the canyon, but this canyon was beautiful. And now, part of Yellowstone, we stayed at the lodge here, which is right, the lodge right here at Old Faithful.
Old Faithful, yeah.
And this goes off between anywhere between 60 and 110 minutes, and there's an app that tells you exactly when it went off. And on this particular cycle, it was almost every 90 minutes. So
90.
It said, so this particular week or whatever, it was going off 90 minutes. So we timed it like it was 3 o'clock or something like that, and we said, okay, we're going to get there, get into the lodge, and we were here for this. It lasted about 5 minutes, and that is about 150 feet in the air. Wow. I mean, we sat next to a nice couple. We were talking before it was going off, because you're waiting and you want to make sure, and they have a walkway and some seating around far enough away. But it was remarkable, but that's about 150 feet. The guy said, how many feet in the air? I said, I don't know, maybe like 40, 50 feet. So I went back, researched, and said, about up to 150 feet. So
there are a number of other geysers, but hence Old Faithful. This is the one that they know is going to go off in a particular time range.
That's systematic. It's almost like clockwork. You're right. There was another one down the road that wasn't as, it was kind of a hit or miss, and you're right. Old Faithful, because it is very systematic. Also in Yellowstone, you have to watch out for
bison.
Wildlife, and so we were stopped because these bison were coming up the road, and so there were 3 of them, and so I rolled in my window, and some people, if they're grazing, will get out and take pictures, and which is crazy because they can get angry. But so I rolled in my window. I said, I'm going to take a picture. Well, the first one was between this one here, he's passed by now, in my rearview mirror, which you can see here. Well, just about as I was taking the picture of the first one, he looked directly at me as if to say, you take that, pal. I'm going to butt you in the head. So I stopped. I thought, geez, and he passed by. And if the second one was coming and kind of looking forward, I said, well, I'm going to snap a picture, but I'm not going to reach out. I'm not going to, make any quick motions. So I was able to get it, but you can see they're very, very big.
Yeah, and they look as though to some people, they're passive and they're slow. And I just remember one time, we've only been there once, but many years ago, people were stopped on the side of the road to watch them,
Absolutely.
and they get out of their cars, walk part way out in the field where they were to take close-up pictures, and it's like, I don't know how many times they tell you, look out, because they can charge like that.
Absolutely. That a woman not on our trip, I read, got gored.
Yeah.
But we actually saw one, not at this particular point, but we were going in a different direction on a different day. And you're exactly right. They were grazing, and there was a bison on the ground, just laying down. So the woman comes up, here to the curtain, trying to take a selfie. And I thought, boy, if that bison, charges, she's in trouble. But it didn't. She was fortunate, but still crazy. And this here, we were actually heading to Montana. We stayed in Yellowstone, but one of the things we do is we do drive a lot to do different things. And we were heading into Montana to the Bear Claw Highway, which goes up to 12,000 feet. It's a very famous drive. Charles Kuralt, if anybody remembers Charles Kuralt, he used to do things about America. He talked about one of the most beautiful drives in the world to him. So we did that on this particular day, and so heading out, there was a sunrise coming up, and it was, we're up high, it was the Washburn Mountain Range, and it was just beautiful, and so we crossed over into Montana and did that, came back and stayed again. We're now all the way out in Hawaii. Hawaii, and you're going to have to help me on the trail, because this is the along the coast, the Na Pali coast here.
Which is unbelievably gorgeous.
And I think it's like Wailalu, but there's a trail.
I'm looking at the Kalalo Trail here. I'm probably going to butcher some of these
That's
names.
okay, I do too. It's but this is the Na Pali coast. There are boats that go out here, but we've talked various things. You get swells, and they say you can go up and down. You can get seasick, but we like hiking, and so it was about a 2-mile hike to this beach, of course, back, and it really was arduous and very slippery because the fronds from you get the moisture. But you also have from the palm tree fronds, especially when it's in the shade, is very wet and slippery, and so it can be in a lot of roots. So you have to really be careful, because we bring always plenty of water, thank goodness. But this was just a beautiful hike, and so we went in 2 miles, down in here.
And this is the oldest of the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah.
And it's not very populated, but I'll tell you, we did many years ago a cruise around it, and that Na Pali coast was, to me, one of the most impressive parts of the Hawaiian Islands.
It was beautiful. Yes, in parts of it, you're right, because I'll show you later here the Waimea Canyon. This coast is beautiful, but where we stayed was on the southeast corner, and I got some picture of that too. And this here is on the same island, Kauai. And this is a waterfall. And the amazing part about it is, again, along the way, we said, geez, we might as well visit this, because we had a guide. And the area where you stop, it was this kind of rickety fence, and looking down, but it was one of the most impressive waterfalls, just because there was the double waterfall, the water flow. But if you saw the area, you think, holy mackerel, but not pretty, but that was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And where we stayed is, this is in Kauai. And we were staying in a place along the coast, and decided. But this picture just represents Hawaii, kind of like a lot where you saw the water, the beauty of the water. You get the volcanic rock, here, the color of it. You can see the red's kind of the sandstone here. You do get greenery too, palm trees, the mountains in the background, and that kind of represented, because a lot of times there's a lot of pictures are more focused, like what we just saw, back here is, it's a kind of a set thing, and we took several pictures, but I just picked one because they look sort of like the same, and you always get a different viewpoint. And so this is Waimea Canyon, still in Kauai, and so this is on a separate day. We went here. The Waimea Canyon goes about 12 miles, and this is called the Canyon of the Pacific, the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. And this is about 3,000 feet deep. We had a lovely hike in there too. It's carved out, and we hiked in, and you see the beauty of the canyon. The one thing you're going to find here, though, helicopters. Now, helicopters, come here, so you kind of get that noise, because the people pay to, go over the canyon and probably the Nepali coast too, but we, again, do the hiking. One of the great experiences we did on Maui was Haleakala. And this is, we're at top of a volcano, and we had to leave about 3 in the morning. Sunrise was going to be around 6. So we had to drive 70 miles, and then when you get to the base of Haleakala, you go up 33 switchbacks, but you got to climb 10,000 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and again, this is a reservation, so they had like 150 reservations because Gene got one, far in advance on this day. And of course, you're hoping for good weather, but for the most part, you're up above these clouds, and a lot of this is moisture, not so much rain clouds. But what you see in the foreground is the crater, of the volcano in Haleakala. And Haleakala covers about 2/3 of the island, because it's a huge, rises up, as you can imagine, over millions of years, which, formed Hawaii. But I didn't take the full sun. Of course, we were there when it's deep blue, and you get the bands of what almost looks like a red and orange, and of course the sun coming up. But we don't take any fancy camera. We take our our iPhones, and when you do this, a lot of times that comes up, you get this green dot. So some of the other pictures have this green dot in it. So I did it. You can start seeing it here, that as it rises. But it was just a beautiful experience, because we were there for just waiting for the sunrise for well over an hour. But there are a lot of people standing around. It's just a kind of a natural thing. But also the Native Americans, or Hawaiians, Native Hawaiians, sang a song for the sunrise. Probably for the gods. But it was beautiful, because you're hearing this native Hawaiian song, greeting the sunrise. It was just spectacular. And coming down the other side from Haleakala, these are called cinder cones, and these are anywhere between 600 and 1,000 years old. I mean, they'll get like steam vents, little eruptions, but the cinders from that will rise, and so it looked kind of otherworldly to us. It was kind of interesting. But you also see what's kind of neat is this. They call this inversion, where the trade wind inversion, where the trade winds coming up over will kind of keep these clouds down, which we saw in the crater. But this is the backside of that crater, Haleakala. Wow. But it was a great experience once again. This, Chris, is we were on the Big Island. And this is Kilauea. Now, Kilauea has been in the recent, you can go on and find Kilauea volcano because it's continually erupting. About 2 weeks before we went to Kilauea, we went to the Big Island, this erupted, and we thought, geez, wouldn't it be great? And because it weren't any danger of a lava flow, because you've got this, you can see the caldera here. But there was a lava flow, but 5 days after we left, it erupted again, because the scientists have it down too. They said, well, around September 18th, it should be another eruption. September 18th came and another eruption. But it just did within the last 2 weeks, and Gene showed it, and it was about 1,600 feet in the air. It was just amazing. Yeah. And at night too. So it's quite remarkable. And I think this, for some reason, this is actually supposed to be a video, but it's not playing. No. But unfortunately, it was scaled to the right, and again, that's it's miles across, and you had this huge steam vent where it had erupted, and as I said, I don't know.
Is that the one that flowed down to town, or wiped out a town down below? That's it.
No,
that's another one.
That's another one.
That's another one.
Yeah, but this, I don't know why this is. Anyway, so. This is the Waipio Valley, and the Polynesians on the Big Island in Volcanoes National Park, and the Polynesians really remarkable that they came from the area, the Philippines, in these boats, and carried, of course, people, animals, and what's called taro, which is it's part of their culture. Incredible minerals. They cook that up, and very healthy for you, but it also prevented scurvy. You found on some of your sailing ships where you hear about scurvy and pirates, etc. But they would have taro. But landing here, the thing is about the Polynesians, they covered 2,500 miles, and you're thinking, how the heck? But without implements, but it was by stars, swells. You're reading, land structures, clouds. They knew, about the clouds would be over land formations, and seabirds. There were certain seabirds, and you'd have to go with a guide down in this valley. And again, the steepness of this was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's just we're going down to this van, thank God, but holy mackerel, you're going down. But in the valley was neat. We were crossing over stream beds, et cetera. But you see these taro fields that they still grow today. And this is down in here, just a beautiful coast here also. But now we're down in the valley, and this is in Volcanoes National Park, and wild horses.
Oh yeah,
wild horses here, and because you get the streams, you get of course the ocean here. There are waterfalls behind us. They were kind of dry. There was in a semi-drought. It hadn't rained as much as they had hoped, but this taro grows, which is fantastic. We saw fields of that, but they're just a very spiritual place. This is called the Valley of Kings, etc. Wow. And our last slide, Chris, is. The pixels, it's smaller. It's much better on the phone. But this is in Maui, and this was a sunset. Of course, it was a beautiful sunset. We just, were waiting, and behind us, they were doing the Native Hawaiians were doing a presentation, singing. So you're hearing this, these singing behind you, watching the sunset, and you're thinking, this is not too bad. Not too bad, It's like
you kind of didn't want to come back.
I could be correcting quizzes right now, but no, this was just beautiful. And so this was so. And one of the things that this is actually our last slide here. But what you don't see is some of the national parks east, and what's interesting is there are so many varied things, and you could find different parks. We've been to every park, as I mentioned, in the United States, but you get to North Carolina and you go with the Appalachians and the Smoky Mountains. It looks like Maine, So it's sometimes finding a picture. So I didn't highlight that. I just highlighted some of the beauty we saw. A lot of it was out west, but parks we found, the Dakotas, place like the Badlands. Badlands at first, I thought, geez, this kind of seems stark because it's almost all rock, but all sedimentary rock. But it really grew on us, literally. And it's, we stayed there for a couple of days, and after a while, both Gina said, geez, we really like this place. It's in the, you see the sunrise and sunsets there, just absolutely beautiful. And
well, this makes you realize that what a beautiful country we have. It's amazing. And you think back to somebody like Teddy Roosevelt when he started the national park system, and look what it's become. It's been unbelievable. And the biggest thing you have to watch out with the national parks is they're almost loved to death.
Yes, it's true.
And COVID and post-COVID ramped that up. Even Acadia right now. Acadia, in the whole scheme of things, is not that big a national park. But it is closer to population centers, and you're seeing 4 million people there a year, and a lot of these parks now have gone to either reservations or special admissions to go, like Acadia with the Cadillac Mountain, things like that, to try to control the flow. I know in Grand Canyon you've got to take the propane buses really to see the western part. You can't just drive over to those things to try to control the incredible traffic that they have now. And
Angel's Landing is another example. You have to get a reservation.
Yeah, that's right. Zion, going into Zion, same thing. So, but they are unbelievably beautiful, and hopefully we'll be able to enjoy them for many years to
Yeah,
come.
and I think, I can't remember if it was after 55, I believe, but to get a pass, the National Park Pass, I mean, we bought ours for $20
Yeah.
a car. So for $20, we've seen every national park in the continental United States, and we're also with that card. And when we show the card, it's really neat because some of the rangers, they'll say, oh, Acadia National, Maine, Acadia National Park. And one woman said, don't tell anybody, but that's my second favorite national park. And we were in Olympic National Park in Washington. I said, is this your first? She goes, yes.
Oh, by the way, for people that don't know this, Acadia National Park and Grand Canyon are sister parks.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you told me that.
Yeah, our sister parks. So
That's wonderful.
And I think I got told that by somebody who was ranger, somebody working the entrance at Grand Canyon, who had also worked at Acadia.
Acadia, that's fantastic.
So kind of interesting, but. Well, Mike, this is unbelievable. It's been an incredible tour of the national parks of the country. I don't know how you're going to top this.
We're going to Portugal. We're taking our sons to Portugal in May, so part of it's going to see some of the other countries. And we had started some international trips, and but again, the world right now is kind of a scary place sometimes. So
it can be, but take some good pictures, because maybe a year from now we can have you back doing this again. It's always a fascinating show, and really appreciate having you here. And now you know.
Thank you.